Hello and welcome to Supposedly Fun. My name is Greg and I am here today to do a Friday Reads video where I wrap up the week in reading and talk about any bookish things that have gone on in the world. It has been a big week for bookish things, one of which I have not done a video about and some others I have. I'll have links to the other videos down below. We'll talk about the one that I didn't do a specific video about in a second. Since I have at least one thing to talk about before we get to the actual Friday Reads part of the video, I did finish 2 books this week, by the way, and I have 2 more underway. I will include a timestamp down below. If you would prefer to skip over to the Friday Reads, you may do so. The book world has been, a lot. News just has been pouring in because we've been getting long lists and short lists. And, I released my Pulitzer predictions early. That video will also be linked down below. It's the full swing of book awards season, at least for this part of the year, the first half of the year. We'll get another book awards season in the fall when we start getting the Nobel Prize for Literature. And of course, the Booker Prize releases its long list and then its short list and then its winner and the National Book Award and so on and so forth. And then that leads into best of year lists, which I love. So right now we're in the thick of the first half of that wave, and then we'll have the summer off. And it just feels like a lot right now. We got the shortlists for the Women's Prize for Fiction. I did a reaction. It'll be down below. The Women's Prize for Fiction, I'm just having an off year with them. I didn't find their long list particularly interesting. Don't find the shortlist particularly interesting. I do find the Women's Prize for Nonfiction very interesting, and my reaction to their shortlist will be down below as well. We also got the shortlist for the Carol Shields Prize. I find that long list and shortlist much more interesting. And again, that will be down below. Next week, we will be getting the shortlist for the International Booker Prize. That will be coming on Tuesday. I will try to film a video that same day. I wasn't able to film videos for the Women's Prize for Fiction or the Carol Shields Prize early enough to post them the same day. So I posted the video the day after. That might happen again. You'll know when you get the video, but I will try to film a video on Tuesday when the shortlist is announced. And hopefully I'll be able to do it early enough that I can post it on Tuesday. Otherwise, you'll get it on Wednesday. It is what it is. But heads up, that is coming. So I did specific videos about the Women's Prize for Fiction and the Carol Shields Prize. I did not do a specific video about an announcement we got from the National Book Award, so I will be talking about that here. And the other thing I did this week is my book haul for the month of March, and I had filmed that ahead because if you follow along, you know that we were in Seattle last week. And because we were in Seattle and running around, I didn't want to film a book haul or worry about trying to film a book haul when we got home, especially with, knowing that the shortlists for the Women's Prize for Fiction and the Carol Shields Prize were coming. So I filmed it in advance. The end result of that is that even though I purchased books in Seattle in the month of March, they won't appear until my April book haul. And my April book haul is already looking massive because of that. It's a lot. If you follow me on Instagram, you have seen some previews of the books that I got and the places that I went. We'll talk more about Seattle when Joel and I film our wrap-up for the month of March, which we are hoping we will do tomorrow as I'm filming this, which is Saturday, the day this video will be posted. It all depends on how we're feeling. I have been getting over a cold. Joel has been getting over an even worse cold. So we'll see how we're feeling. And if we can film that video, then we'll talk more about Seattle. But so, wow, my April book haul is already massive. And I'm filming this on April 4th. So there's a lot of time left in the month. It's a lot. It's a lot. But we'll get to that. So the National Book Award, let's talk about what they announced this week, which is the 2025 list of the 5 under 35 honorees. So the way this works is that they get 5 authors who pretty much always have some connection to the National Book Award. Either they have been on a long list or a short list or have won, or they are a previous 5 under 35 honoree. And they select those authors. Those authors pick an author who is under 35 to highlight. And it's always interesting to track because these authors that are selected are sometimes in the mix for the National Book Award in the not so distant future. So it's a really interesting list to follow, and it's a great way to discover new, younger authors who are getting started and you might want to follow. So I thought I would not do a specific video about it, but I would discuss it in this Friday Reads video. So the 2025 honorees. By the way, Teddy is passed out on the floor and snoring. So if you hear snoring, it's him. That's what it is. Here are the honorees for 2025. The first person who selected was Mona Susan Power, who wrote a book that was on the long list for the 2023 National Book Award. And I want to say it was called A Council of Dolls, something like that. I liked that book. I thought it was very interesting. So I am glad that she got to be part of this committee. She selected Stacy Shannon Denetotsi, specifically for The Missing Morning Star and Other Stories, which is a book that I had not heard of at all. I will have the National Book Award website down below with a link to all of these authors and books. And there is a quick blurb about the book. In The Missing Morning Star and Other Stories, Stacy Shannon Denetotsi confronts long-reaching effects of settler colonialism on Native lives in a series of gritty, wildly imaginative stories. A young Navajo man catches a ride home alongside a casket he's sure contains his dead grandfather. A gas station clerk witnesses the kidnapping of the newly crowned Miss Northwestern Arizona. A young couple's search for a sperm donor raises questions of blood quantum. The debut collection grapples with a complex and painful history alongside an inheritance of beauty, ceremony, and storytelling. And that sounds really interesting to me, like really interesting. So I will probably be looking for that book and seeing if I can find a copy to read. The next 5 under 35 honoree was selected by Disha Filia, who was a 2020 National Book Award finalist. And if you follow along, you know that she was a finalist for my beloved The Secret Lives of Church Ladies, a fantastic story collection. She selected Megan Howell for a book called Softy. Let's see what the description of this book is. In beautifully melancholy stories of magical realism, the women and girls in Softy transform their bodies and test their sanity, trying to find meaning in the loneliest of places. A former child star haunted by a past she can't remember, an Afro-French girl with an obsession for earlobes, a loner whose only friend is hiding a terrible otherworldly secret. Each of these stories shares situations that are sometimes fantastical, sometimes commonplace, but always strange. From a Corsican vacation town in its off-season to hospital rooms and a seedy hotel suite in Chicago, experience the everyday come fully untethered from reality. That sounds interesting. I admit I'm more drawn to The Missing Morning Star, but Softy does sound like an interesting book. The next person who selected a 5 under 35 honoree is C. Pam Zhang, who was a 2020 5 under 35 honoree, who wrote a book called The Land of Milk and Honey and How Much of These Hills is Gold, I believe. I have not read either one, but have wanted to since they were released, so I really need to catch up to that. C. Pam Zhang selected Maggie Milner for a book called Couplets, A Love Story. Here is the description of that one. A dazzling love story in poems about one woman's coming of age, and coming undone. A woman lives an ordinary life in Brooklyn. She has a boyfriend. They share a cat. She writes poems in the prevailing style. She also has dreams of being seduced by a throng of older women, of kissing a friend in a dorm room closet. But the dreams are private, not real. One night, she meets another woman at a bar, and an escape hatch swings open in the floor of her life. She falls into a consuming affair, into queerness, polyamory, kink, power, and loss. Humiliation and freedom, and an enormous surge of desire that lets her leave herself behind. Maggie Milner's captivating, seductive debut is a love story in poems that explores obsession, gender, identity, and the art and act of literary transformation. In rhyming couplets and prose vignettes, Couplets chronicles the structures and pitfalls of relationships, the mirroring, the pleasing, the small jealousies and disappointments, and how the people we love can show us who they truly are. Also sounds like a really interesting book. So far, I am still thinking The Missing Morning Star and Other Stories is the standout for me, but we have 2 more to cover. Next, we have an honoree selected by George Saunders. Yes, the George Saunders, who was a 2013 National Book Award finalist. You can probably guess that was for Lincoln in the Bardo. He selected Alexander Sammartino for a book called Last Acts. And here is the description. A riotous, irreverent, yet big-hearted debut novel about a broke father-son duo who go all in on some of America's deadliest obsessions. Even though his firearms store is failing, things are looking up for David Rizzo. His son Nick has just recovered after a near-fatal overdose, which means one thing. Rizzo can use Nick's resurrection to create the most compelling television commercial for a gun emporium the world has ever seen. After all, this is America, Rizzo tells himself. Surely anything is possible. But the relationship between father and son is fragile, mired in mutual disappointment, and when the pair embarks on their scheme to avoid bankruptcy, a high-stakes crash of hijinks, hope, and disaster ensues. Does sound interesting. It's missing Morningstar is still my standout personally, but your mileage may vary, and I'd love to hear which one of these books you are most interested in. We have one more, and this one was selected by Morgan Talty, who wrote my other beloved, The Night of the Living Rez, which is a collection of Links stories, and wrote Fire Exit, which was released last year. He selected Jemima Way for the original daughter. This is, I think, the only book on the list that I am relatively familiar with, although I have not read it. Here's the description. Before Aaron, Genevieve Yang was an only child, living with her parents and grandmother in a single-room flat in working-class Bedok, B-E-D-O-K. Genevieve is saddled with an unexpected sibling when Aaron appears, the shameful legacy of a grandfather long believed to be dead. As the two girls grow closer, they must navigate the intensity of life in a place where the urgent insistence on achievement demands constant sacrifice. Knowing that failure is not an option, the sisters learn to depend entirely on one another as they spurn outside friendships, leisure, and any semblance of a social life in pursuit of academic perfection and passage to a better future. When a stinging betrayal violently estranges Genevieve and Genevieve must weigh the value of ambition versus familial love, home versus the outside world, and allegiance to herself versus allegiance to the people who made her who she is. In the story of a family and its contention with the roiling changes of our rapidly modernizing, winner-take-all world, The Original Daughter is a major literary debut, rife with emotional clarity and searing social insight. And that does sound really interesting. I think I would probably put that one in just knee-jerk reaction from the descriptions. That one would be second place behind The Missing Morningstar in terms of books that I am interested in. I will have links to those books on Bookshop in the description box down below as well. So you can get more information or purchase them through their Bookshop helps independent bookstores and their affiliate link, so that helps me. Or you can find them at your local independent bookstore or order them through your local independent bookstore, or you can support your local library, which is a really good thing to do because libraries, there have been a lot of cuts in the humanities, so supporting your local library is more important than ever, perhaps. So with that, let's get to the actual Friday Reads portion of this video. As I said, I have finished 2 books this week. The first one is a book that Joel and I listened to together on audio on the drive home from Seattle. We had listened to the audio of Kate and Frida by Kim Fay on the way out, and we wrestled a little bit back and forth about what to listen to on the way back. We had an option that is going to come up in my book haul for the month of April, so stay tuned. And we ended up going with The Friend Zone by Abby Jimenez. If you follow along, last summer I and Joel read Just for the Summer, which was Abby Jimenez's book that was released last year. And it was the third in a series of books that are sort of interconnected. And then we loved that book so much that we went back and read the 2 previous books in the series. The first one is called Part of Your World, and the second one is Yours Truly. And just this week, the 4th book in the series, which is called Say You'll Remember Me, was released, and we can't wait to read that one as well. So this one, The Friend Zone, is the debut novel of Abby Jimenez, and it is in a trilogy. I believe it's a trilogy, 3 books. that are linked together, but outside of the series of part of your world. So she wrote 3 books that were connected, and now she's written 4 books that are connected in a different way. The female best friend character in the friend zone becomes the protagonist in the second book in the series. And really, I look forward to talking about this book further with Joel when we do our monthly wrap up, because we did this together and it'll be fun having a conversation with him about it. And, you know, more of the same from Abby Jimenez. She does not miss so far. We are 4 books in to her published works, and every single one of them has been a not just a hit, but like a home run. So we are really looking forward to reading Say You'll Remember Me. We are looking forward to reading the other 2 books in this series as well. The premise of this one is that there's a meet cute, go figure, between our protagonists, Kristen and, I'm blanking on the man's name, but Josh. And they are basically the maid of honor and the best man at their best friend's wedding. Their best friends are marrying each other. And Kristen is in a relationship with someone else who's overseas. He's in the military. And she's in this long-distance relationship, so she is attracted to Josh, and Josh is attracted to her, but nothing can happen because she's in a relationship. He's about to come back home and leave the military and move in with her. But Josh is new in town. He has recently relocated from South Dakota to California, and he is working at the fire department where his best friend works, and picks up a job on the side helping Kristen with her work, which is creating dog furniture, custom dog furniture for people online. And he has carpentry skills, so he is helping her. And that means that they are spending a lot of time together and getting to know each other, but they can't do anything because they're in the friend zone, and everything goes from there. And it's great. Abby Jimenez does a great job. You know, a lot of the time when romance books tend to be a little bit longer, I feel like they can't sustain it, but Abby Jimenez does. She manages to do a lot of things that would frustrate me in any other romance book or from any other author, and they just work when she does them. You know, 3rd act breakups and things like that. In all of her books, I'm willing to go along with a trope that would usually prompt me to roll my eyes. And the friend zone, it's just so good. It's so good. I don't know how I would even begin to go about doing a ranking of her books so far, but this one would be high up there. I think Just for the Summer will probably always be my favorite because it was my first, but The Friend Zone would be up there. And as in all of her books, there is a nice mix of sweetness and cinnamon bun and serious stuff that the characters are going through and which they need to address in order to, you know, have their happily ever after. And I really appreciated it. And I look forward to reading more Abby Jimenez in the future. So that is the first book that I finished this week, and we did it in our trip back from Seattle. So the other book I finished was March by Geraldine Brooks. If you follow along, you know I've been on a bit of a Geraldine Brooks trip because I listened to the audio of her new memoir, which was called Memorial Days. And that is a memoir about her relationship with her husband, Tony Horwitz, who, spoiler alert, if you see this green book on my shelf right there, that will be in my April book haul. It's a copy of Tony Horwitz's book, Confederates of the Attic. I found a copy of it in a used bookstore in Seattle, and I'm so excited about that because I love that book. And anyway, so Memorial Days is a memoir of her relationship with him. He died suddenly in 2019. And after reading that, I ended up reading Year of Wonders, which was Geraldine Brooks's debut. And once I was reading Year of Wonders, I started to think, I've done all of the foundation work for a Pulitzer Prize deep dive because Geraldine Brooks won a Pulitzer Prize for March. This is probably not an edition or a cover of the book that you're used to seeing, but this is what the hardcover looked like when it was first released. In fact, is this a first edition? I don't think it is, but let's find out because I am curious. all right, it's not a first edition, but this is what the hardcover looked like. And now it looks, the paperback release looked very different from this. And the paperback that you would find in stores now also looks very different from this. So I figured, why not? I'll just continue on this Geraldine Brooks journey. I did read this book after it won the Pulitzer Prize for fiction in 2006. It was published in 2005. And I just wanted to reread it. So basically all I had to do was that. Well, I like to make things more complicated. So I have another thing I need to do, another hoop to jump through before I can do my deep dive. But I have actually started working on it now that I've finished this book. And I'm going to hold a lot of my thoughts for that deep dive. What I will say is I had previously given this book 3 stars when I read it way back when. And I think that was about right. There are a lot of things to recommend this book. There are a lot of really interesting, nuanced things and thinking that goes into this book from Geraldine Brooks. But there are also some clumsy things. It feels a little more in line with the last 50 pages of Year of Wonders, where a lot of dramatic things started happening. There are some dramatic things in this book that I don't think need to be there, and just kind of add a layer of melodrama that doesn't need to be there. If you're unfamiliar, the premise of this book is that March refers to the March family from Little Women, but it's a play on word because the father is in the army. There's marching involved. So obviously, in Little Women, the father is gone for most of the book. He comes home toward the end of it. And this is a book that is told from the father's perspective. And I'll talk a lot more about that shift in perspective when I do my deep dive. It's interesting. There's a lot of interesting stuff to talk about with it. But that is what this book is. It is the story of Little Women from the perspective of the father. And what's really interesting as well, just as a tease for the deep dive that I'm going to be doing, Geraldine Brooks, in crafting the character of the father for the March family, she looked to Louisa May Alcott's own family and modeled the March father on Louisa May Alcott's father, Bronson Alcott. And that will be an interesting thing to talk about in the deep dive as well. So I'm going to hold most of my thoughts on this one, but I did read it. I finished it. It's fine. It's a good book. Not a bad book. 3 stars might be a little harsh, but you know, it is what it is. Again, this year I'm trying to think of 3 as okay because it's in the middle. So this is a good book. I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's great. So to me, 3 feels fine. I know there are people who would say, oh, I would never read a 3-star book, but you know, it's a good book. It's interesting. And there will be an interesting conversation to have about it. So I finished this yesterday and I was really having a bit of a struggle trying to decide what my next physical book would be, because I have some library books and one of the library books is very short. It's barely over 100 pages. So I had been thinking I could just read that over the weekend. I don't have to have it back to the library until the 18th, so I have time. But maybe I'd be better off just getting that out of the way and off my plate and then trying to proceed. But, you know, I am someone who has a difficult time making plans and sticking to the plans. Like I said I was going to read some Irish authors in March, and that did not happen. So you know, this is something that happens to me. So when I'm in the mood for something, I really need to seize that opportunity. So finishing Geraldine Brooks's March made me really want to read The March by E.L. Doctorow. And this is the book that is sort of the other half of the conversation about the Pulitzer Prize for 2006, which was for books that were published in 2005. The interesting thing about this is I was working in a bookstore at the time, and The March by E.L. Doctorow is the book that I think a lot of people were predicting would win the Pulitzer Prize for fiction. And the fact that March won caused a lot of confusion. And I think I remember hearing once that even Geraldine Brooks, when someone said, hey, March won the Pulitzer Prize for fiction, she was like, I think you mean The March by E.L. Doctorow. And they were like, no, we mean you. So it caused a lot of confusion. And The March was also a Pulitzer Prize finalist. So it feels like in order to do my deep dive thoroughly, I feel like I want to read this book. I actually had already read the other finalist a long time ago. It was The Bright Forever by Lee Martin. And that book, to me, good book. I wouldn't nominate it for a Pulitzer, but I'm me. So it'll be really interesting to read this. I have not gotten very far into it. Again, I finished Geraldine Brooks's March yesterday, so I'm 15 pages into this one so far, and it will be very interesting to get a full, well-rounded picture of what the Pulitzer Prize race was like in 2006. So that's my physical book. Once we got home, I restarted Wandering Stars by Tommy Orange. I mentioned in my last Friday Reads that I had barely started this. I think I had been 5 minutes into the audio, and because we were in Seattle and trying to like safely go to bookstores without, because we were getting over colds, so we didn't want to get anybody else sick. So as we were doing all that, I just didn't have much time to read, and certainly not to listen to an audio. So I was only about 5 minutes in, and I had been thinking, when we get home, I'm just going to restart the audio and go from there. So I did that. I went back to the beginning, and I am now 25% of the way into the audio for Wandering Stars by Tommy Orange, which is a great audio production because there are different segments in time and different characters, and each segment has a different narrator. So you get a different voice, and that is really interesting. And another thing that's really interesting is it only occurred to me when we got home and I picked up the book again, because the title is Wandering Stars. I always looked at the cover and thought of these designs as stars. But if you are familiar, this is a sort of prequel. It's both a prequel and a sequel to Tommy Orange's debut, which was They're There, which was a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize for fiction. And I don't think it's a spoiler at this point because the book has been out for a long time. They're There leads to a mass shooting at an event in Oakland. And so I was looking at the cover and I was like, oh, those could also be gunshots. Just had never occurred to me at all. So that was something that was really interesting. I have really liked the first 25% of this audio a great deal. And I called this one of the front runners for the Pulitzer Prize for fiction when I did my prediction video, which is, again, going to be linked down below. And if the rest of the book holds up, it could very well be a threat for the win. And, I might be okay with that, depending how the remaining 75% of the book goes. I just haven't had a whole lot of time to listen to audio. I'm trying to actually go to sleep in the evening instead of staying up and listening to an audiobook. So that has put a damper in a lot of my listening time. But I'm really enjoying this book so far, and I'm so glad that I have been reading it. So that is what I've been reading this week. That's what's been going on with book prizes and the National Book Award, 5 Under 35. The only other thing that we are continuing to love The Pit, and we started watching The Residence, which is a new mystery series on Netflix in the United States, starring Uzo Aduba. We are only 3 episodes in, but it's fun so far, and it'll be interesting to see where that goes. So I would love to hear what you have been reading, enjoying, watching, and all of that stuff in the comment section down below. As always, I really appreciate your time, and I will be back. Until then, happy reading.